Welcome, everybody, to episode 9 of Huddle Up. Today's guest is a former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, Winnipeg Blue Bomber Hall of Famer, as well as the president of the CFL Alumni Association and a 2001 Eastern and CFL All-Star. Brett MacNeil is joining us today. Thanks, Brett, for coming on to the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So, Brett, you've played for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers for a majority of your career and have been closely involved with the CFL after your playing days. Talk about a little bit about the origins of playing football in your life and where it really started with you and why you got into the game.
Originally from Ottawa, Ontario, part of the western part of Ottawa called Nepean. Was raised to be a hockey player, played for the Nepean Raiders organization, who famously developed Steve Yzerman. So Steve moved from Cranbrook, BC to Nepean, Ontario when he was a young teenager. So I got to watch Steve play and practice for many years. An organization that also produced Jamie Baker, Jeff Brown, Jeff Chikrin, and the guys that played in the 80s, and they continue to feed the OHL and the Canadian Hockey League. But I was a hockey player until major midget. I was playing AAA in Ottawa up to the major midget level. At the age of 14, 15 of thereabouts, saw the movie Enter the Dragon with the late Bruce Lee and late John Saxon from this week. Sparked an interest in martial arts. Began training in the martial art of Wing Chun Do, Gung Fu back in Ottawa at the Wing Chun Do Club on Catherine Street, and also had a great appreciation for the boxers I watched growing up, from Muhammad Ali to George Foreman, to Larry Holmes and that group, and on to Mike Tyson, and just had a great interest in not only the combat arts but weight training. Anyway, through all of this time, I was playing hockey and ended up becoming a more and more physical player, being asked to take on a very physical role on the ice, and the side effect was that I spent a lot of time in the penalty box and grew very frustrated with the game of hockey because I was always in the penalty box, and because I was a bigger player at that point in my career. And interestingly enough, was recruited by the football coaches at Robert Borden High School. They started coming to my hockey games and recruited me to try football. So in grade 11, I went out for the JV program at Robert Borden High School. I played tight end, was part of a championship game that year. It was my first year playing football, so it felt like it was a natural progression for me. I'd been a track athlete in my younger years, sprinter, so I had some natural speed as far as running a 40-yard dash and whatnot. That's how you're measured in football. It was already into the weightlifting and the weight training, the martial arts, which I incorporated into my football game and into my coaching, and had a great first year playing football. Grade 12 didn't play because of conflict with my martial arts training, but in Ontario we have a grade 13, fortunately, and as a fifth year senior, and played for the Robert Borden varsity program in grade 13 on the defensive line. So I moved over to a defensive tackle position, and again, just trying to be athletic and aggressive. Had some early success on the defensive side of the football. Went on to play in the Ottawa Senior Bowl. Was named the top lineman in that game, and started to generate some interest from college programs. So the late Larry Utek, who was just inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. Coach Utek recruited me from St. Mary's at that time, and came to that Senior Bowl to watch me play. I went on the next season to play for the Ottawa Junior Sooners in Ottawa. I had 1 year left of high school eligibility, but wanted to open some new opportunities south of the border, and the best way to do that, in my opinion, was to play junior football in 1986 for the Ottawa Sooners, who were a nationally ranked program, very strong program at that time in the 80s, and the team was used somewhat as a farm team for the Ottawa Rough Rider program. much like the Regina Rams serviced players to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in that era, where junior football was very strong. And 1 year at the Ottawa Sooner program generated an opportunity at Colgate University in New York State. Colgate University was Division I AA program, played the Patriot League, still do, and had a long history of a small school program, sending players to both the NFL and CFL, with a top academic program recognized nationally, and went over to Colgate in 1987. Very exciting year as a freshman defensive lineman. Got to play in some big games. First being at Duke University in North Carolina. A game I expected to sit on the bench for, and played the majority of the game. Got in the quarterback's face a few times. Took a few roughing the passer calls, but again, I was just trying to be aggressive and still learning the game of football after many years playing hockey. What I liked right away in football was there's no penalty box. So when you commit a penalty, you move back a little bit. You don't exit the field of play. So I right away was a fan of football. But yeah, it's some great experience at Colgate University, playing at programs like Duke, Army. We played the cadets that beat Army at Mikey Stadium, and one of the greatest memories football I've ever experienced. Greg Mineski, our middle linebacker and current NFL coach, had 20 tackles that day, and we upset Army. We played the Syracuse Orangemen in '87, who had an undefeated season and went to the Sugar Bowl, tying Auburn. And that year, we got to play, one of the two top programs in U.S. college football in 1987, and they thumped us pretty good. But it was great because family and high school coaches were able to attend the game. 3 hours from Ottawa, down in the Carrier Dome in Syracuse, and I got to play in that game, and had my first college sack on future CFL and NFL quarterback Don McPherson. So that was a great thrill, playing on the defensive side of the ball there. On to '88, where for a variety of reasons ended up transferring to Boston University, playing the old Yankee Conference. Again, playing Division I college football in the U.S. was a great thrill and goal of mine. And the only unfortunate part of transferring is that you have to sit for a year, so you then redshirt. So I didn't redshirt as a freshman, so I redshirted as a sophomore over in Boston University's program. But as strong as Colgate was, really in regards to their competition of play, being a small college that would play, that would schedule big time opponents, Boston University in the long term scheme of things was the best situation for me. I went and played for a new head coach at BU, former CFL and future NFL head coach Chris Palmer. So Chris had assembled an extremely strong coaching staff at BU, and he had visions of moving Boston University from a 1AA program up to a 1A program. But unfortunately, the president of BU at the time didn't have the same plan, and Coach Palmer moved on to the NFL after my second year at BU. Went on to become the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. So, very, very strong coaching staff. So my first year at BU, redshirting on the defensive line, you're a practice dummy essentially. But I got to continue to grow as a defensive lineman, largely working against future pro tackle Mike Graybill, and so I got to work on my game, work on the weight room, work on my academics. And what was awesome was that the offensive line coach at BU's name was Tony Sperano. So Tony, Coach Sperano was the O-line coach at the time for BU, and I was trying to be a pain in his neck every practice, working over his offensive line, until eventually he approached me and asked if I'd be interested in moving over to the offensive line, which was supported by Coach Palmer, who had coached offensive line in the CFL and believed that I would have more opportunity to play at a higher level if I moved to the offensive line. So in 1989, made the move to started at left tackle for the BU Terriers. 2 years consecutively, 89 and 90, and we had some moderate success at BU. We weren't a playoff team. We weren't in the bowl championship series, but could have been a part of the NC2A 1AA playoffs. But we fell just short in the 2 years I started. You are drafted in the CFL after 4 years of eligibility, irregardless of remaining in college eligibility, whereas the NFL will only draft a player who has used his eligibility or has declared himself eligible for the draft, thereby retiring from college football. So a potential 5th year at BU never happened. The meeting with Coach Sperano regarding my future, he had concerns if I returned for a 5th year to try and come back for the NFL Combine, that I may experience a career-ending injury in my 5th year and never have the opportunity that was already on the table in the CFL, which was being a 91 first-round draft pick by Ottawa. And so Coach was just concerned if I'd come back, that opportunity never would have materialized. So with 1 year left on the table, went to Ottawa in 1991 and was a part of Steve Goldman's team there with the Ottawa Rough Riders. How's that so far?
That's great. That's a lot of fantastic names and icons on both sides of the border with football. You mentioned Mike Vrabel, now in the NFL with head coach of the Tennessee Titans, former New England Patriot.
Mike Vrabel.
Oh, Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel. Okay.
Sounds very close. Yeah, Mike was a 6'7" tackle. Ended up playing for the Browns and then moved up to the CFL, played for the Ottawa Rough Riders. Sorry if I missed.
Oh yeah, no problem. No problem.
Vrabel, not Vrabel. Vrabel was too young to cross pass with me. That's one of the great benefits of playing at a U.S. program is you have you touch a lot of different names, right? And it's not calling out a name. It is a reference, but these are the people that were part of my football development, part of my football life long before I ever played in the CFL. And those people, those names mentioned, are the reasons I ended up in the CFL and had a long career. And I always paid respects to coaches that helped me out over the years. And unfortunately, at 52, a lot of those coaches are starting to either be really old or passed away. And unfortunately, Coach Sperano passed away 2 years ago, July 22nd, and was only in his 50s. We had maintained a relationship over the years. And Coach Sperano had a lot of interest in the CFL. Back when the World League had a team in Montreal who were called the Montreal Machine, he had been approached to be their head coach during his Boston University days. He did consider taking that job and joked with me that he was going to take me out of BU and bring me up to Montreal. But that never happened. But Coach Sperano obviously went on to be head coach of the Miami Dolphins and the Oakland Raiders. So he had an amazing career. He was a sick guy too. He had heart disease. Unfortunately, passed way too young. But I thank Coach Sperano every day for how he helped me and the unselfish decision he made when he gave his blessing to leave BU a year early.
And absolutely, and Coach Sperano, again, another icon within the world of football, and especially in around that time. It sounds a lot from your story that football translated well for you, even though it wasn't a game that you had played for a long time, or it wasn't a part of your early childhood development in terms of playing sport, being a hockey player first and foremost, and then transitioning to training with martial arts. And so you and again had a long career in the CFL as well with Winnipeg, and were with Ottawa the first year. So how did you take the way that you trained and did you find that the way that you were already training was not much of a big transition to what you needed to keep you successful and give you longevity in your career in the CFL?
Well, again, so when you're in high school, you're pretty much on your own, at least in those years. And I used to just get spun for information. So you're reading Muscle and Fitness magazine. One of my strength heroes was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he had a tremendous amount of material out there available when I was growing up, and sort of aspired to have that sort of physique, and did a lot of sort of unique training, like pushing pickup trucks around a parking lot, and running hills with your buddy on your shoulders, and all sorts of different things. And then we got to once we got to Boston University, I had to work with Mike Boyle. And Mike Boyle's a globally renowned strength coach based in Massachusetts. And Mike was very much influenced as an Olympic and powerlifting instructor. And Mike was renowned in New England. He not only took care of the BU football program, but also the BU hockey program. So when we were training back in the 80s, I shared the same weight room as Keith Kachuk, who ended up, playing in Winnipeg as a Jet, Tony Amonte, Joe Sacco, Sean McEachern, all NHL guys who were training with, being trained like football players in an era when hockey players were really not encouraged to lift weight. There was a misconception that they wouldn't maintain flexibility, and these guys were groundbreaking in hockey as far as training as football players. So Mike Boyle was great. Strong emphasis on the squat, the bench press, the power clean, and everything else was considered unimportant. Those three lifts were measured. Those three lifts were celebrated, and there were boards up in the weight room. And you wanted to be at the top of all three of those lifting charts. For a brief time, I was at the top of all three, but I didn't have the 700-pound squat that a guy like Dave Taguliamo, who's another NFL O-line coach, had as our center at BU. But yeah, you got to rub elbows with some physical freaks, as I call them. And again, if you want to know the difference between the NFL and the CFL, it's just that league has a number of these freakish type players. One that came to see Mike Boyle was defensive tackle named Eric Swan, who I think went 6th overall to the Phoenix Cardinals in the early 90s. And Eric came down to meet Mike, and the first day he ever learned how to do the power clean lift, he threw up over 400 pounds. And at 6'5", 320 pounds, this guy, he could jump to the highest plyometric boxes in the gym. It was just freakish skill and size and strength. But you got to rub elbows and train with guys like that, because that's who Mike Boyle attracted at BU. I got to meet Larry Bird, who came to Mike for training. Guys like Cam Neely and Lyndon Byers, all Bruins, and a bunch of guys that were preparing for the NFL combines. All would come to see Mike, and I got to train with those guys. So what I noticed I was getting trained more play in the NFL than the CFL, because once I got to my first training camp in Ottawa, where I'd been surrounded by hulking, bulky linemen in the U.S. college ranks, and these guys who were preparing for the NFL combine, the offensive linemen for the Ottawa Rough Riders were much leaner. They probably averaged, the starters averaged around 270 at about 6'5", but ran like deer. What really shocked me at my first CFL camp was how well the linemen ran. And when you spent the last 5 years basically doing nothing but lift and try to grow size, with with whatever cardio they made you do to, or whatever speed work they made you do, but the emphasis was on putting on weight. When you're in that camp with guys like Rob Smith and Gerald Roper and Kari Larenko, these guys just ran like deer. So that's something I really had to work on in my early CFL days. It was bringing not only my speed up, but my fitness up. So it was an eye opener. My first professional camp. Not only the like I said, the fitness, speed, um, the size and strength and skill of the defensive lineman was very, very intimidating. After playing Division One and two-way football against a lot of guys who went on to the NFL, the CFL defensive linemen were another level of their own. So it was a tough learning experience. Let me tell you. So in Ottawa, I played for Steve Goldman. Our starting quarterback was Damon Allen. We had a really good team. We were a playoff team in 1991, but started the year 0-5, and Coach Goldman got clipped. Papa Joe Ferragelli replaced him, and Papa Joe came in and basically took the pads off in practice, and everyone anointed Papa Joe the best coach in the world just because he took the pads off. Because that's an era. The 90s and early 2000s were an era where every practice was in full pads, every practice was full contact. Practices were more challenging than games normally because the players across the line from you, they knew every play, they knew every strength and weakness you had versus an opponent you see once or twice a year. Big difference. So the practices were tough. Anyway, Papa Joe brought a more relaxed atmosphere into Ottawa, and Ottawa that year ended up being a playoff team, losing to Winnipeg. And, that staff was let go at the end of '91. 1992 training camp, Ron Smeltzer was the new head coach. Ron come over from Edmonton, and had a little different philosophy than Steve Goldman. Coach Goldman was a hard-nosed coach. He liked and respected my style of play, which was a physical style, I could say. And I was quickly traded during the '92 camp. Winnipeg, Ottawa. I was their first-round pick in '91. They picked Denny Chronopoulos out of Purdue, first pick of '92, and so I then became expendable because they had two young linemen there to develop, and I was traded to Winnipeg. Pretty much near the end of training camp in '92, and got to meet the great Cal Murphy and play for Coach Murphy for about a week in training camp before he had a heart attack and heart transplant in 1992. So Urban Bowman took over as interim head coach for the season. Urban had been special team coordinator, and our quarterback stable included our new starter Matt Dunnigan, and our backup was Danny McManus, followed by Sammy Garza. So with Dunnigan and McManus, you had as good a 1-2 punch as ever been seen in the CFL. And there was a stretch of 7 games when Matt Dunnigan was hurt in the '92 season, where Danny Mac came in, won 7 in a row to finish the '92 year off. At the same time, Coach Murphy was recovering in London, Ontario from a heart transplant, and probably coaching by phone. But Coach Murphy made it back for a playoff game, our Eastern Division Championship that we hosted against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And Coach Murphy's big move that week was to replace Danny McManus, who hadn't lost yet that year, to Matt Dunnigan. So Matt came off the injured reserve and led us to a blowout victory over Hamilton. And that was back in an era when you would host and win the division final, the crowd at Winnipeg Stadium would flood the field. So 3 of the best memories I have in football were the '92, '93, and 2001 Eastern Championship games at home, winning in front of the Bomber fans, and having thousands and thousands of fans rush the field. And let me tell you, exciting times. Some fans got a little bit touchy-feely with some players and might have got a little more than they hoped for, but great memories. And so went on to the Grey Cup in '92 in Toronto versus the Calgary Stampeders and Doug Flutie. So we started Matt against Doug, and Matt didn't have I don't think he had the best win-loss record head-to-head against Doug Flutie. I don't know how many quarterbacks did. again, the greatest football player I've ever seen live, Doug Flutie, and I'll put him over anybody, any league. If he had played his whole career in the NFL in a suitable offense for him, I don't think there'd be any argument. But we had a rough first half, not much going on, and we had an opportunity to start Danny McNeil in the second half, but we gave Coach Bowman or Coach Murphy gave Matt another chance, and again we were still down into the fourth quarter against the Stamps in the 92 Cup, and Danny Mac came in, and he lit up Calgary in that fourth quarter. It was just too little, too late, and Stamps went on to win that cup with Doug Flutie. It was only a matter of time before that team won a cup. That Calgary run they had with Flutie and Alan Pitts in that group, incredible football team. And it was just an era where it was tough to win. And we were pretty loaded, especially through the Matt Donegan era and then the Kahari Jones era, but never could put it together. 93. Back in Winnipeg, Cal Murphy was healthy and back on the sidelines. 93, my third year in the CFL, was my first year starting on the offensive line. I won the left guard position. We had a stable of guards. Bob Molly retired after 92. Nick Benjamin was back in 93. And Nick and I both fought for that job. But Nick was he was an older player at that point, the late Nick Benjamin, and Nick was also suffering some physical challenges, and so it was time for me to take the reins and move into that spot. And we had a great season, 93 or 14-4, and that was the beginning of U.S. expansion. Very exciting time for the league. And it's an era that gets knocked, but I would do nothing but praise it as far as the experience for the players, going down to the U.S. and going toe-to-toe with all-American rosters, which essentially were, 3 to 5 more NFL teams, because they were 100% Americans on those rosters. But 93, 14-4, we played Edmonton twice that season, both blowout victories for Winnipeg. A lot of similarities to 2019 for the Bombers, who were blown out twice by Hamilton. But as we learned in 93 and as Hamilton learned in 19, blowout wins the regular season do not equal Grey Cup championship. So in a nothing game against Sacramento in 93, a game that was well in hand, a game where Matt Dunnigan should have been wearing a ball cap on the sideline. Matt was still in the game, and very similar injury to Darian Durant a number of years ago on a non-contact play, ruptured his Achilles tendon, and Matt Dunnigan was lost to us for the playoffs in 1993. We made it to the big game versus the Eskimos in Calgary with Sammy Garza under center. We committed 7 turnovers. Score was 17-0 before we got the ball, our second possession, and we were marching with about 4 minutes left, tie that game. The second half, we ran the ball very effectively with Michael Richardson, Blaze Bryant. We had a real great stable of running backs, and we were running the ball well. And we were marching towards a tying touchdown drive, and that 7th turnover happened in our backfield. Unfortunately, Damon Allen ran out the rest of the clock, and the Eskimos won that game. So we were back-to-back Grey Cup finalists, and tough pill to swallow, especially considering our MVP and Matt Dunnigan had to watch from the sideline, and we all believe we win that game with Matt under center, but that's history now. But interesting follow-up to that story was that the next time we played the Eskimos was the 94 7-1-3 game. So the game where Matt Dunnigan set the pro football record for single game passing yardage in 1994. That game represented our Grey Cup. So to a man in that locker room, we pretended that the game was the Grey Cup from 93 and that Matt Dunnigan was healthy. And that's what we would have done to them in our minds the year previous. And we would all have Grey Cup rings from the 93 season. But unfortunately not. 94, again, very strong Bomber year. We had, U.S. expansion was in full bloom. We had to go toe-to-toe with the Baltimore Stallions several times that year. One of the best football teams I've ever seen. That Baltimore Stallion club led by Mike Pringle and Tracy Ham and O.J. Brigance and Alfred Payton, and that offensive line that they had. That it was a heck of a team, a heck of an experience to play the Baltimore Stallions at the old Memorial Stadium where the old Baltimore Colts used to play, and Johnny Unitas, and be in those locker rooms and to feel the ghosts that were sharing that locker room with you. And you sit in a locker and you speculate as to who sat in that locker before you did, and you start to think about the history of some of these stadiums that we're playing, and it was pretty amazing. With Baltimore, very, very tough opponent. 94, we played them in the what was called at the time the North Division Championship to go to the Grey Cup. And we talk about similarities of 2019. The game was won and lost on a crossbar pass. So Matt Dundigan had Gerald Wilcox wide open in the end zone to win the game. Matt hit the crossbar in 94, and so we did not go on to the Grey Cup. BC ended up defeating Baltimore in the 94 Cup in the Canada versus US game, and unfortunately the Stallions didn't win the Cup until 95 over Calgary when they had both Jeff Garcia and Doug Flutie under center, and Baltimore won that 95 Cup with little or no fanfare back in Baltimore because they just announced weeks before that the NFL was returning to Baltimore, the Forum of the Ravens. So that gets us up to 94, which my season ended in Week 18 versus Toronto with a blown left interior cruciate. So I didn't even play in that Baltimore playoff game. We had 5 ACL injuries that season, including our starting tailback Blaze Bryant, who had set a single game rushing record that year in Hamilton when Coach O'Shea played middle linebacker for the Ticats. So Blaze had a big game, and unfortunately didn't finish the year. Sammy Garza did his ACL, I did mine. A couple more players also had major injuries that year. So you got to stay healthy. It's a marathon of a season, and fortunately we had too many guys on the sidelines that we needed on the field. 95, we were a playoff team, but after Matt Dunnigan left for Birmingham, we weren't, and we lost Danny McManus in 94 to BC, where he went and won the Grey Cup. So it was a time of it was a building phase in Winnipeg, and through 95 and 96. We had Reggie Slack come in, a quarterback in Boston. We never really put it together in 95, 96. And, the 96 season ended in Edmonton on a frozen field at Commonwealth, where we had blown out Hamilton in 92, which was the biggest playoff victory at the time. The Edmonton victory of 96 versus the Bombers in Edmonton is now the biggest blowout in CFL playoff history, and it's a story that I often talk about with my buddies and alumni friends, because Coach Murphy was fired after that game, undeservedly so. The footwear the Eskimos were using had been enhanced, and unfortunately, we were on the losing end of things because of that footwear enhancement. And guys like Gizmo Williams, who we had great success against on special games, had big games, largely due to equipment reasons, which were confirmed to me once I became an Eskimo in 1998. So I was an Eskimo for one season over there, and then the guys were quick to share share the '96 playoff story with me. But unfortunately, we were on losing end, and then Coach Murphy days of Winnipeg were over. So then, but I was looking. The franchise was also looking to rebuild and to move another direction, and that's when Jeff Reinbold was brought in to be head coach in Winnipeg, 1997, and very exciting times with Coach Reinbold, still in the league with Hamilton, and did some very innovative, unique things. Unfortunately, we only won 4 games that year, but we had a lot of fun winning 4 games. Our 4th victory was over the Grey Cup finalists, Saskatchewan Roughriders that year. We put a good thumping on them and sent them off to the playoffs. A nothing game for us, but Coach Reinbold did some very unique things regarding training, regarding practices with music being piped into practice, and was trying to provide every advantage nutritionally and training wise he could for the team. And we did some unique things like go up and visit with the fans after games, and we did promotions where we had fans on the field and at practice and all sorts of cool things. But unfortunately, Jeff won 4 games in '97 and like 2 in '98 before being fired. But before the '98 season, I was shipped off to Edmonton right before training camp, and traded for Larry Thompson. Went over to. I never thought I'd leave Winnipeg. I expected to play my whole career in Winnipeg, and probably would have if Coach Murphy had stuck around. But went on to Edmonton, made the best of it. Kay Stevenson was the head coach. David Arthur was the starting quarterback. Had a really solid team there. But unfortunately, 1 week into training camp, had my second major knee injury, ACL rupture of my right knee, and that was the end of my time with Edmonton. Next season, I was claimed on waivers by Winnipeg. Dave Ritchie had been named the head coach for 1999, and Coach Ritchie spent some time with me in Edmonton at the Coach of the Year Awards, right in front of Edmonton's brass, and he was happy to do so. He wanted to bring me back to Winnipeg and be a part of building something back in Winnipeg in '99 with Kerwin Bell under center. Again, we had a tough year. We weren't a playoff team that year. We were used to being in the playoffs, but it was a rebuild. It was Coach Ritchie's first season, but he had Brendan Taman as GM. We knew it was only a matter of time before Brendan started to put some pieces together. And 1999 was a tough year, but 2000 we traded for Kahari Jones, and the rest is history. Kahari came in, gave us an instant boost in 2000. I mean, the game he came in was when it's in Edmonton and a big shootout performance, and we lost that one, but Kahari showed really quickly that he had great chemistry with Milt Stiegel and the rest of our receivers, and we just had to continue to put some more pieces around Kahari in near the end of 2000. And we had guys in camp like Arlen Bruce and G. Roy Simon over those years, so you can't keep them all. And it was just to watch the greatness of Milt Stiegel from his arrival in 1995 as really a young kick returner from Cincinnati, and to see him really develop. And he wasn't really featured until 1997 when Coach Reinbold took over. That's when you saw Milt and what he was capable of. And I played 7 years with Milt. I was shared the huddle with him, and still haven't seen anyone catch him from behind. So to see that guy day in and day out was a real treat.
And so many stories and so many different moments and players and iconic history within the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the 90s. You mentioned the practices and how things had changed with wearing less equipment. And you could see nowadays how many practices are there with guys wearing full pads? Almost never. And back in the day in the 90s or early 2000s, that would have been seen as soft. And you talk about Winnipeg going through different eras with the success of the 80s and then the not quite putting it all together in the 90s. And I like that you mentioned the game with Matt Dunnigan, the 7-13 huge game. I remember when I started studying the history of the Bombers, seeing that big plaque in the Bomber store with the picture of him against Edmonton at or Canada Inns or Winnipeg Stadium, holding the record, and watching the interview after with I think it was what's from TSN there. I think it was Gord Downey or no, not what's his name. I can't remember.
Gord Miller.
Gord Miller. Yeah. Gord Miller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gord Downey. Gord Downey's a musician, but yeah. Gord Miller conducting the interview on TSN after Matt Dunnigan talking about what it meant and a lot of what ifs. And you mentioned the allusions to the 2019 team. And the 2019 team looks back at all the what ifs of the 92, 93, 2001, 2007, 2011 with not starting Danny McManus. Is there such thing as losing your job to injury? That's a question that's been posed. I've seen in the NFL before with different examples, and it exists equally as much as the CFL, and especially with the 93 team not having your leader really, really sucks, especially in a moment where you almost won the game, even still committing 7 turnovers, even without your starting quarterback. And the next year, blow them out and light them up in Winnipeg. And the pure excitement that you guys have, maybe not legally and protection-wise now with fans storming onto the field after division finals, but I can only imagine how amazing it was to have been a part of those teams and the ups and downs in the 96 game, the infamous blowout against Edmonton in their Commonwealth Stadium, and then the innovations that Jeff Reinbold brought into the CFL with his time in Winnipeg, and the clip that's still played on TSN to this day of the shot on Damon Allen and the brawl and the rivalry that Winnipeg had with BC and how much of a fiery guy that Jeff Reinbold was, very very much a player's coach. And then the renaissance in the late 90s and early 2000s, Dave Ritchie guys, I believe it was stunned Hamilton, I think it was, in the Eastern semifinal in 2000. That was
2000, yeah. So the Hamilton were the defending Grey Cup champions, and we went in there with Kahari Jones, and we were down. That was a great Hamilton squad, and we were down in the fourth quarter, and Kahari got hot, and Milt got hot, and we ended up with a chance for Troy Westwood to put us into the Eastern final, and Troy nailed one of the biggest kicks of his career. And a great moment in Hamilton. Unfortunately, we went into Montreal, in a place that we hadn't won in a while. I mean, we were still haunted by the Baltimore Stallions. So the Montreal Alouettes are the Baltimore Stallions.
Yeah.
That Montreal Concord franchise folded. Baltimore became Montreal after the Ravens moved to Baltimore.
That was 96, right?
96. So the 96 Alouette team looked a lot like the Baltimore Stallions team from 95, who won the Grey Cup. So that was a tough squad. And, we didn't win very much against those guys. And so we rolled in there in 2000 with Kahari Jones, our fresh starter. And it felt like our day early in that game. We were up 16-0. Everything was working. We had all the momentum. Montreal was shocked. They were playing tight. And for some unknown reason, our offensive line coach decided to give me a rest. I guess I was getting old. He wanted to give me a blow, so he pulled me out for one snap. And as I began to drink water from a Gatorade bottle, I heard the crowd erupt. And you couldn't really see what was going on, but Kahari had thrown a pick and was taken out on a very dirty play by one of Montreal's defensive linemen. Hit Kahari in the back of the ribs, and Kahari admitted he never felt the same after that hit during that game. I did come back into the game, but Kahari wasn't the same player, and Montreal took over momentum, beat us in a pretty close game, went on to play the BC Lions in the Cup, and BC ended up winning that game. And we felt we matched up very well with the Lions, so we gotten past Montreal. We had a good crack at that 2000 Cup. But again, Kahari was injured, played injured, which he often did in that game, but it never had to happen again. If I was in the ball game, What Kahari and I used to do was, again, I reconstructed knees at that stage of my career. I wasn't going to make any tackles on the interception. So if Kahari threw a pick, I would personal protect Kahari to make sure that no defensive lineman took any shots at him. I was out of the game on that play, and that's what happened. Is that a Montreal defensive player, took him out, and a penalty wasn't even called on the play, which is ridiculous. But yeah, and that's how our 2000 season ended. The 2001, it looks a lot like with Winnipeg and Calgary. So in 2018, Winnipeg had Calgary on the ropes in the Western Final, but didn't finish. And I know that Coach O'Shea saw that as one that got away, and that's how we felt in 2000. And we went into the off season believing, and that belief goes a long way. Because 2001, 14-4 season. Second time I've been part of a 14-4 season after '93, and we went 2-2 to start that season. We came out really quick, and then a lot of people weren't overlooking us anymore. So remember we were at 2-2, and I got called on to move into center for the first time in my career. So it's the 11th year of my CFL career. I played every position on the field on the offensive line except for center, and we had an opening there, and we were trying to sort of mix it up a little bit, and I got to play center for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. It was a great thrill, and really enjoyed my time at center. I could be more aggressive because I wasn't always covered up like I normally was at guard. And, I was able to let's say do a little more hunting than usual. If you're center and you're uncovered and the middle linebacker doesn't blitz, you can now help the guards, and so that's a lot of fun being able to be aggressive inside and give a little more time for the quarterback. But great season. 2001. We were a superstar team. We had how many All-Stars? We had
basically the whole CFL Eastern All-Star team was Winnipeg.
Yeah, we were loaded. But again, you look at strategy, right? We had such a big year. We won 12 games in a row at one stage. But the thing is, when you clinch first place early in the season, now the dilemma is rest versus rest. And who do you sit to recover from some nicks, and who do you want to keep playing? And after 12 straight wins, we went into Toronto, and we sat Kahari Jones down. Kahari wasn't injured, but he was banged up, like all CFL quarterbacks are. And we thought we could give him a rest, and we started Brian Ayat at quarterback in Toronto. Lost a close game to the Argonauts, and lost a lot of momentum. And season culminated in week 18 at home against Calgary in a win-or-go-home game for the Stamps. They had 7 wins that year. It was just sort of a down year for them, but they were a very scary team in the second half. They started to come on. Their defense was ferocious, and they came into the Winnipeg Stadium in week 18 having to win or be eliminated. If we had taken care of business and beat the Stamps in week 18, they're out, and we don't see them in the Cup in 3 weeks from now. So they ran through the West. We meet them again in the Grey Cup in Montreal. We're 14-4. We're overconfident. We're ill prepared for Wally Bono-led Stampeders, who were cool as cucumbers before the game. I often think about the TSN awards that week, and the Bombers team got lost on the way to the theater for the TSN show. I grabbed one of my teammates early on before the team went on a wild goose chase looking for the studio entrance. I could see where it was, and I tried to let everyone else know, but they had already left. So we arrived early, and we saw the Stampeder team arrive like very cool customers not long after, and then probably an hour after that, the Bomber team shows up, and sweating and agitated and annoyed, and you know, we went on to win almost every award that night. And I often say that the team that wins all the individual awards is usually the team that loses the cup. I know that there was a mix in 2019, but I know the Ticats took home the majority of the hardware.
And MOP went to Brandon Banks.
At the league awards, exactly. I think the exception was Willie Jefferson. But the top lineman was Chris Van Zyl over Stanley Bryant. That was one that stands out. I mean, I think Stanley would have been a first-time, three-time winner of that award, but you can't have Stanley pass Chris Walby. So, so Chris Van Zyl won. That's just good banter. But Great Cup Sunday, Stanley proved he was the best lineman in the league, regardless. But yeah, so we won all the awards, and you know, we got outsmarted that week. You know, Winnipeg, we shared the Olympic Stadium for practices. We took the morning practices all week. We were both at the Delta hotels in Montreal. Calgary, we were at a Delta that was surrounded by restaurants. We were at a Delta that was middle of nowhere. It wasn't close to any good restaurants. So I know the guys weren't eating well. I know the guys, because we had the morning practice, we're probably not getting as much rest as the Stamps who were practicing in the afternoons. They just seemed more well rested and poised to play us. Again, we had all the pressure on us, and it's funny, it was a lot of the news that week circled around not the Grey Cup game, but the hiring in Montreal of Don Matthews. So normally in Grey Cup weeks, announcements like that are delayed. I remember that was a big story when Coach Matthews was hired by the Alouettes, and that was a lot of the buzz that was going on around that game. But I mean, we played in front of over 70,000 fans in Montreal, and in a game that we were expected to win. It came down to a throw. Curry saw Milt Stiegel open. We would have to score a touchdown, a 2-point convert to try and go to overtime, but we believed we could do that, and we got sacked on the play. Unfortunately, Calgary's defense was ferocious, as I said.
Joe Fleming was the player, right?
So yeah, I got to when you try to win a championship, you don't usually get a sluggo on the other side of the ball. And Joe Fleming, who had been a teammate, I'm an opponent, a guy that I hit with a block in the Week 18 game. I don't know how he got up from. The guy was just a fantastic player, resilient player. I had the pleasure of having to block Joe Fleming all game in the Grey Cup. Had a good game against Joe, but what they did with him on passing downs was they would bounce him out to defensive end, and that's where he was when he got the sack on us last play of the game. So I didn't get a chance to tangle with Joe every play, but the guy was an immense talent. And this Calgary overall, were more physical than we were. Doug Brown got a sack on the first play of the game as a rookie, and expected him to get more, and like that. I don't think we had another sack after Doug's first sack. And it was one of those games where we were in the scoring zone and we weren't finishing. We had 4 field goal opportunities.
Only one went through, I think, right?
We were 1 for 4. We were 1 for 4 in field goals as an offense. So that was 9 points, lost by 8. But we also had a punt block for a touchdown late in the game, and that was the play that really broke our backs. There was also the 90-some yard catch to Mark Boerigler before he went off to the NFL in a big play. But some of the other plays that stand out in that game, one was a hit on Kahari Jones, where Kahari was essentially knocked unconscious. And in today's day and age, Kahari's day would have been over, his season would have been over. But Kahari was down, and I was one of the players who was asking that he got up and continued. Let's just say I was encouraging Kahari to continue, see if he could continue. And Kahari, we got him up, I got him to the sidelines. He got checked over, and he was in the game the next series. And Kahari Jones, that series, after in a game where he probably had no business still being in the game, but due to his toughness and resiliency, he continued. And threw a touchdown to Milt Stegall that I can still visualize today. Incredible throw, incredible catch. Milt wanted that cup bad. We all wanted it, especially the guys that have been around for a long time. And we wanted it for Milt. And he had that catch, which was a huge touchdown. Kept us close in that game. But one of the other missed opportunities was late in the game in a series where we could have taken the lead and really taken control of the game. Milt caught about a 40-yard catch on the right sideline, I recall, and got called back on a roughing penalty to Brandon Dyson, who was playing right guard for us. And just on a physical play by Brandon, he was a physical player, and he got flagged for that, and that got called back. And again, every time in that game when we thought we had some momentum, something would happen to turn the tables. And that game, the Grey Cup championship, all championship games are great games of momentum. And if you think back, if you played a best of 7 series, maybe we win that. It's the best of 5, but it's a 1-game playoff, and anybody can win it. And unfortunately, everything must come together on game day to win a championship.
Well, of course, and the number of factors that go into winning a Grey Cup is so much more than just what you see on paper or what you see in the beginning of a game or the first play of a game. And you talk about alluding to 2019 and to 2001, and with everything, right? Preparation is so important in football, and it's not just what you do on game day, it's what you do the week of. You talk about practicing in the mornings instead of the afternoons. You talk about being in the middle of nowhere. You talk about the many factors that contributed. Getting lost to the TSN award show, even though that seems like something that doesn't have to do with the game, it still plays with your psyche. And football is, as you get to the professional level, is just as mental as it is physical. And at that point, right, taking the shot taken to Kahari Jones, the fantastic catch. I think it was the play before Kahari took a deep shot to Arlen Bruce that was broken up, and then went the next play back to Milton, got it, and that brought the game within 5. And after all those things, still to be that close, and the unfortunate ending, obviously Joe Fleming, a great player, and to not even have the ball launched into the end zone is unfortunate. And I remember before the 2019 Grey Cup this year, Milt playing the paper plates clip that he had, a video of his favoring of Winnipeg in the Grey Cup in terms of wanting them to succeed, and his feelings of having let the fans down by not having brought a Grey Cup home for Winnipeg in 2001 or 2007. And I can only imagine how much of an amazing teammate that Milt was. And you talk about, I like how you mentioned, you never saw him get caught from behind. And I can definitely say, as a fan from a firsthand perspective, watching in the stands, that holds true. And after the 2001 season, that was towards the end of your playing career, and then you transitioned into your work with the Alumni Association, as well as having to take in so many great memories and stories, and obviously the physical battles and being nicked up and injuries obviously take a toll on you. But what, in terms of how you've been involved with the Alumni Association after your playing career, what is the thing that you enjoy the most about your role as the president, and what do you think is important for fans out there to know about the significance of the Alumni Association and about the work that the players do and their role after they're done playing in the CFL?
Oh, that's good stuff. So just a quick, sort of quick history of how I ended up here, involved with the Alumni Association. So as a player, I was the player representative for the CFLAA. So most CFL teams have one American and one Canadian player representative. And Chris Walby handed that off to me during the '96 season. So I was a player rep for 5 years in Winnipeg, both before and after my time in Edmonton. And so I became very interested in, in the collective bargaining agreement, and the rights and the rules for players and the grievance process, and to be a part of a collective bargaining agreement negotiation, which have minute-to-minute changes, and to then have a deal struck between the executive of the Players Association and the league and the board of governors. Then you have to go back to your locker room and sell that deal to the players, because until the players vote and ratify any collective bargaining agreement, it's not a deal. It's not a done deal until the players sign off. So that whole process I found very interesting, attending the APMs in different locations, from Cancun to Las Vegas to Montreal. I mean, we flew all over the place, and that was exciting. Early days meeting guys like Pinball Clemens and George Reed, who were all involved with the PA, was great learning and great experience for my alumni years. So 2002, I was back with the Bombers. Wade Miller used to talk about unfinished business, and we all felt like we had been close. And in 2002, we believed we had the team that could win it all again, after missing, coming up short of Montreal. Unfortunately, at the halfway point in 2002, I was placed on the injury reserve, and that was the end of my playing career at Winnipeg. Almost immediately, I fulfilled a long time request from Coach Brian Dobie at Manitoba, and Brendan Damon basically orchestrated that while I rehabbed my injuries with the Bombers, I would move over to the Bisons as the offensive line coach in 2002, and enjoyed a 7-year run with the Bisons as the O-line coach, which obviously the highlight was the 2007 undefeated great Vanier Cup championship season. And the kids on that team I don't have any sons, but if I did, a lot of them were on that squad in 2007, a football team that wouldn't be denied a championship. And it really showed me what a championship team looks like. And I was very vocal with Coach Dobie, particularly that year. It was the best opportunity to win it, even though we had chances in 02 and 06. 07 was our best chance. And I was very vocal with Coach Dobie regarding mistakes I had seen made in preparation in all 3 Grey Cup losses in Winnipeg. And, hoping that we could learn from those mistakes and correct those. And we did in, defeating St. Mary's 2014 in Toronto in a memorable Vanier Cup. Which was a culmination of a long career and a ring, winning a ring that was very, very special, especially compounded with the 3 Grey Cup losses as a player. But I didn't want much to do with the Alumni Association, either in Winnipeg or nationally. When I retired, there was no national alumni at the time. At the time, we had the Winnipeg Blue Bomber Alumni Association, a group largely led by the Bud Grant era teams of the 1960s. A lot of those great iconic players, led by Kenny Plain, who many were American or from other parts of Canada, all settled and lived in Winnipeg. And those guys had done the heavy lifting for our Alumni Association for many years. But when you're a player who believes they could still be playing and you're no longer playing, that's 99.9% of us, especially when you haven't won that championship that you were chasing with every minute of every day. You came up short. It's a tough pill to swallow. Critics will say that professional athletes have to prepare for their post-playing career, while they're playing, and either work on a second career or taking more courses or whatever it may be. But the reality is, you know, from May till November, you are a full-time professional athlete, which is full-time every day, hours plus every day. Days off are very rare. You know, they have bye weeks now that we never enjoyed. But you don't have an opportunity to develop any type of career, because the moment that you lose focus on the next training camp or the next practice or the next game, you're generally going to be replaced. So a lot of guys who are focused on off-season work, you know, come May, June, you know, they end up getting beat out and their career ends. So you have to focus 100% on making that team the next season, and you have to focus 100% on rehabbing injuries, which unfortunately most of my Christmases were spent either in a shoulder sling or on crutches. So you can't work if you wanted to. So you're rehabbing at the Winnipeg facility, you know, all winter, all spring. You're not paid until it's after games. So, you know, you're doing that work in the off season to try and make the next year's team. There's no guarantee. The only thing that's guaranteed is you can show up on day one of training camp. It doesn't mean you're going to be there on day two. So anyway, I wasn't too interested in alumni activities early days. After retiring in 2003, I was focused on the Manitoba Bison football program and helping bring a Vanier Cup to the Bisons. Brought Cal Murphy's playbook essentially over to Manitoba and sort of redesigned it with offensive coordinator Jeff Stead at the time. And I think this day they still run a form of that offense that we enjoyed some great success with in the 2000s. And, you know, Coach Murphy was a part of that because it was his playbook that we ran, you know, for the most part, with obviously, you know, the experience and knowledge of the other members of that offensive staff, including Von Mitchell. But 2006, when Winnipeg hosted the Grey Cup, you know, again, I was not planning on attending any alumni activities. I still was focused on coaching college football, and you know, wasn't excited about how my career ended. And you know, I got dragged out to the BC Lions Den that Grey Cup week by a couple of old teammates, and Gerald Roper and Ian Sinclair, and you know, went out to the Lions Den and saw so many familiar faces, albeit older and less hair, but saw so many familiar faces, and it really came to the conclusion that the Grey Cup is, you know, the ultimate alumni reunion, and started to really have a more positive opinion of what the Alumni Association could be. 2009, CFL Alumni Association was formed by Leo Ezrins, who's our executive director, former Blue Bomber and Hamilton Tiger Cat linebacker. You know, had an amazing career in the CFL over 10 seasons. And our our first president, Hector Pache, you know, one of the greatest offensive linemen to play the game. I think he has 6 Grey Cup rings, if I'm not mistaken. Was part of the 5 in a row Cup teams with the Eskimos, and so, you know, after 06 and that great experience, started to become more interested and became an active member of the Winnipeg Blue Bomber Alumni Association, and you know, just started attending events and autograph signings and whatnot, and having fun with the boys, and a lot of good camaraderie and fellowship, and ended up being nominated to their board of directors, and you know, been on their board of directors for a number of years now. And what we do locally is support minor football. That's our main focus, is supporting minor football. Winnipeg Rifles, for example, we donate to them every year. We also support various high school scholarships, and we are also partners with the Cyclone Life for the River Review facility, which is very important agenda for the Blue Bomber Alumni Association. So in spending some time with that group, was later nominated after the growth of the CFL Alumni Association. I was nominated after Joe Poplawski was going to hang up his board seat with the National Alumni, and I took over as Winnipeg's representative in 2013. So the requirements of being a part of the CFL Alumni, you have to be nominated by your local chapter. So I was nominated by Winnipeg, started attending AGMs at Grey Cups in 2013. So I went to the Saskatchewan Grey Cup, seeing the Riders defeat Hamilton at home, which was very unique and very exciting. And that was 2013. By 2015, where we hosted the Cup in Winnipeg, was nominated and accepted my current role as president of the CFL Alumni Association, the volunteer chair position. Leo Ezrin, our executive director, does all of our heavy lifting. He's our full-time face of our group. And as the Blue Bombers' focus is supporting minor football, the CFL Alumni Association's focus is growing a support fund, and that support fund is for players who are having difficulties paying for medical expenses, and we help them out with that. And we also have a Plan B. That one, the medical expense component is a Plan A. We have a Plan B, which is an emergency component. So if a former player is having financial difficulties in their personal life, we definitely are an avenue for them to seek some assistance. So whether it's medical or it's a personal emergency, we are, as an alumni association, there to grow and help these former players that need help. And it's a great cause and one I'm very proud to be a part of.
Absolutely. And Brett, a lot of great things you mentioned with being involved in alumni. And sometimes the funny way that life works out, especially with when you finish your career, to back up a little bit, the point you mentioned about the focus you need to really succeed and have a long career cannot be understated by any means, because while the CFL is not as lucrative as the NFL, of course, the amount of training and focus and intensity required to stay in that league and earn your position every year does not dwindle. And to go through a long career, and after your playing days, you talk about wanting, 99% of football players wanting to chase the glory and wanting to get that coveted ring and not being able to get it and still believing they can play is a, like you mentioned, a feeling that is shared amongst many football players that finish their playing career. And the work with the Bisons that you did sounds absolutely fantastic, especially with what it means to be a part of a team that won a national championship and an undefeated national champion at that, considering the year before the Bisons, I believe, were undefeated going into the Hardy Cup and then lost to Saskatchewan at home, and unfortunate loss, of course. But the preparation and the mindset that you're able to bring to the team from the experience you had with having lost 3 Grey Cups really aids the ability for the Bisons to have been prepared for that Vanier Cup, considering they had their own mishap in 2001 against St. Mary's when they had a very strong team but weren't able to finish, and they were able to exercise those demons of the past. And to wrap up here before we finish our episode for today, talk about what it means from the perspective of having been a Winnipeg Blue Bomber alumni, Winnipeg Blue Bomber Hall of Famer, to have seen the Bombers finally all put it together this past season in 2019, to have witnessed them win the Grey Cup after having been a third seeded team, limping into the playoffs, having picked up Claros at the deadline, all the serendipity that had to happen for Winnipeg to win. What did it mean to you watching now as a former player of the team and also just as a fan and an alumni association and the president of the Alumni Association to witness the event of Winnipeg winning? What did that mean to you?
Well, that's a well-put question. So we arrived in Calgary on Wednesday night, I think it was. So there were a lot of demons in Calgary. Before the game, there was a Canadian Hall of Fame reception where I got to spend some time with David Williams. And David was a star receiver in the CFL. He didn't have a long career, but he had a very successful career. David was one of our receivers in 1993 when we lost the Grey Cup, and we both, seeing each other. Probably the last time we spent time together was 1993 in the Grey Cup, and here we are in Calgary again, lamenting that we had lost that Grey Cup. So there are a lot of ghosts that exist when a club has its drought that was counting 29 years, and you have, your memories of 3 cup losses aren't great memories, and some nice fans will say, well, it's better to have played in those cups than to not play it in those cups, but it's not that easy to say it that way. Doug Brown and I both share that, I was an old guy, he was a young guy when he came to Winnipeg, but we both lost 3 cups, one together, and then he lost with 07 and 11. And, I remember watching the 11 Cup and seeing the look on Doug's face as the clock ticked down. And I knew what that felt like. And it's not a nice feeling. So, on one hand, you have regrets that you didn't win the cup with the Bombers. That was the goal, that was the dream, especially coming back from Edmonton. And you see the years pass, and you become an alumni, a fan, a former player. You're not really a part of the franchise anymore, but you still pay attention. You still attend games. You still read the articles. You're still interested. You're still rooting for the guys. You're rooting for the fans, and that's what it was really about. Was we had our AGM. We had our Legends Luncheon, so the CFL Alumni Association Legends Luncheon is our major fundraiser. It takes place on the Friday before Grey Cup, and we had north of 1,000 attendees at the Calgary Legends Luncheon, and it was a who's who of Calgary alumni who were presenting that day. And I pointed out Wally Buono in the audience because Wally had beaten our teams year in and year out, and I had tremendous respect for Wally. And he came from the Cal Murphy School, so I had great affection for Cal and those that were close to him. And Wally was one of those guys. As a president of the CFL Alumni, I'm supposed to be impartial, but I did and didn't plan on it, but did give a rallying cry for the Bombers to win at that Legends Luncheon. And I was sitting back, seeing how objective I could be that week, until one point I was out having some fun with my fellow alumni and ran into Coach O'Shea. And the history of Coach O'Shea is a long one, going back to his rookie year in the CFL, where it was my job to block Mike for the majority of my career when we played Hamilton and Toronto, and to watch Coach O'Shea develop from that sideline to sideline middle linebacker for those great Argo teams and Hamilton teams, becoming a young coach in Toronto, winning the Grey Cup as a special team coordinator, and then joining Winnipeg as a head coach in 2014, and really seeing the patience of the Bomber management with Coach O'Shea's friend, with his group. He didn't pull the plug on those guys. His second year when he had a bit of a decline in the win number, it stuck with him. They went through the Drew Willie to Matt Nichols, and then a very special player that no one will ever forget, Chris Trevler, was signed by the Bombers. And when I saw that kid, I knew that they had something special, and we're going to miss Chris. You'll never see anything like that again. And I believe he was the biggest part of that championship. And who's who of superstars. Chris Trevler to me was the guy that he was just that special player that put them over the top. And just to see what those guys did, go into Calgary. Not only what they did in the Grey Cup, but beat Calgary at home in Week 18, and Zach Collaros' first ever start as a Bomber. To go into Calgary in the
Western
semifinal, the West Severn final, and to destroy Calgary with Chris Trevler. They didn't know what to do with this kid. To dominate the Stamps in Calgary like that, the site of so many horrible losses for our franchise, year in and year out, from the Doug Flutie teams to the Jeff Garcia teams to the Dave Dickinson.
About that specific game, I think one thing I realized too quickly is from 2001 until that game, that was the first meaningful win Winnipeg had in Calgary. The only two previous wins they had in Calgary were end of the season games after they had already clinched the playoffs, and the 2014 when they were already eliminated from the playoffs. So the fact that they had not won any meaningful games there since you had played makes it more insane too.
Very good. In 2001, week 1, we open in Calgary and blow them out with Charles Roberts as a rookie, and Doug Brown scoring a touchdown a la Stan Mikowas 84 Cup. And, Troy Westwood and I hugged and cried after that 2000 win in Calgary, because we had been destroyed and blown out so many times at McMahon going back to the early 90s. You have no idea how many times we saw a quick six, that horse run around that freaking stadium. And that history there, to win there was big, and then to lose to them in the Cup was just heart-wrenching. But to see the Bombers in 19 go out and do everything right as far as preparation. So when I saw Coach O'Shea, I gave him a hug. I gave him my blessing to win. I just had a good feeling. And, from early on in that ball game, to see Jeff Coate and Jefferson dominate the Hamilton offensive line, to see what Andrew Harris did in the run game, see what the quarterbacks with the dual threat with Kolaris Strevler, what those guys did. But the unsung heroes of the 2019 Grey Cup are names that probably not household names, but should be, and it's Cody Speller at center, Drew DeJarle at left guard, Patty Neufeld at right guard. What that rookie center in Speller and rookie left guard DeJarle did, I can't comprehend. If I tried to visualize myself as a rookie in the Grey Cup after starting a handful of games, what those guys did was tremendous. What Hardrick and Bryant did on the edge, solid as can be. But those three interior Canadian hogs made me proud to be a part of this franchise, and to really, I feel like I was, connected to those guys. They played so well, were so dominant, and those guys should be really proud of themselves, because they were the real unsung heroes of the Cup.
And absolutely, I brings back so many great memories of, I was at the Grey Cup with my friends there, and it was to have witnessed it in Calgary after all the losses and all the treachery and even the West final, the against the Riders, to go back. They hadn't had a Prairie final since '72, where they lost to Winnipeg Stadium, the infamous kick out, one of the very first kick out endings that there had been in a CFL playoff game, for the Riders to have won that in Winnipeg, and the Bombers go back. You talk about Matt Dunnigan with the crossbar against Baltimore, and then Cody Fajardo against the crossbar for Winnipeg to secure the victory after having unsung hero of that game, Shane Gauthier, making a touchdown saving tackle on Kyron Moore, who had taken the fake punt return touchdown, or punt return back almost for a touchdown, and huge special teams play, very, very unsung part of that win. And then you mentioned the offensive line in the 2019 Grey Cup. Like that's an unsung, like that whole group were unsung heroes that game. Because you look at Jefferson, of course, you look at what Harris did, of course, and even Harris scoring a touchdown run from a similar distance, similar hash, everything like he did against Winnipeg in 2011. For him to have done that for Winnipeg, I think was amazing. And even as a fan for myself, watching that was really relinquished that memory of Harris scoring against Winnipeg, and now brought more of a positive connotation to seeing him do that. And then the offensive line, just Collaros didn't get sacked, and Hamilton's defense was outstanding. They had a great defensive line as well throughout the whole entire regular season and the playoffs. And the job that they did should not go unnoticed. Or Medlock, scoring how many field goals? I think he had 6 field goals in that game or something like that. It was super important to hear the stories of, the emotions that you and Troy Westwood had experienced together after having beaten them in Calgary and having been kicked up and down the field by that team for so long. And You mentioned the horse running around. It's just, it's so amazing to see the synthesis of all those feelings and those experiences come back all in one big rush and within a week, and to see them top it all off with a blowout victory against Hamilton, and to see so many illusions through all the experiences you've been is one of the truly most remarkable renditions I've heard of Winnipeg's Grey Cup win and what it means to a player, to a former player, to a fan, to an alumni. It's incredible. And with that, Brett, I want to thank you so much for having been a part of Huddle Up today, and for having graced all of us listeners with your wisdom and your stories and the great renditions and tales of all the things that happen between the lines and behind the scenes with CFL players and during different eras, and many of the things that sometimes fans aren't as in tune with or don't notice from watching games on TV unless you speak with a player of yourself. So Brett, thank you so much. And are there any last words that you wanted to offer insight to listeners out there related to being an offensive lineman or playing football, or any last words that you wanted to mention for all the listeners out there?
Well, I'll just say that, in the midst of this pandemic that we're in, I know that there's great interest in sports returning and football returning, and I think everyone's just going to have to remain flexible and know that that there's a lot of guys that are just chomping at the bit to get back out on the field to entertain you. We don't know when that's going to be, but just keep watching those old games that they keep showing on TSN, and reminisce with the rest of us of a great league, a league that sometimes is undervalued, but coming from somebody that has played a long time in professional football, and played with and have got experience with guys from both leagues, and coaches who've been in both leagues, and we're all in this the greatest game in the world, and I think we're going to see football again. Whenever that day is, it's going to be a great day. When we can raise that banner at IG Field, it's going to be a great day, and no more talking about droughts, and we're up 11-4 over the Riders and Cups, so that's always fun talking points when I talk to my friends out in Saskatchewan. So thanks for having me. I see a great future for you in sports reporting, and I'll come on anytime. And thanks for reaching out. Take care.
With that, thank you again for huddling up, everyone, today with Brett MacNeil, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, Hall of Famer of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, president of the Alumni CFL Association, and 2001 Eastern and CFL All-Star.